All right, so this is my 120 gallon 4x2x2 PVC enclosure for my 2-year-old Mexican Black Kingsnake. An enclosure like this should work for a Mexican Black Kingsnake for their whole life, especially a male. Typically males don't get over 4 feet, but some do, so I might eventually have to upgrade this, but we'll cross that bridge once we get there. I've been meaning to make a video on this enclosure for a little while now, but I was ready to make a video, and then I would decide, oh, actually, I want to change this about this enclosure, and then I'll make a video. And that just kept happening for a while. And that's still happening, but it's just like I really want to get this video out. So if you're watching this a few months after this video has come out, chances are I've probably made even more changes. Like within the near future, I would love to switch this enclosure over to bioactive. I just don't know enough about bioactive enclosures, so that hasn't happened yet. But I do want to discuss some things about this enclosure, so we'll get right into them. I was going to film this with my camera, and I still am, but I have a little guest with me. This is my blood boa. I just got him recently. Obviously, this is not a Mexican Black Kingsnake, even though this video is about the Mexican Black Kingsnake. I was just holding this guy to socialize him, and just because I kind of wanted to show him off to all of you guys, but this video is not about him. If you do want to see his enclosure, there it is. If you want me to make a video about his enclosure, I will not be doing that until I get his upgraded enclosure. I ordered something quite a bit larger than this from Black Box Cages. Not larger, just taller, just so I can suit his arboreal needs and wants as a snake. So I'm going to go ahead and put him back, and then we'll switch over to the camera. Don't worry, his humidity is not actually that low. It's just because I have the window open. So we'll go ahead and put him back, and then I will switch over to my camera, and we will talk about the Mexican Black Kingsnake enclosure. Okay, Bo has been put back. He went into that hide right there. Now let's talk about the Mexican Black Kingsnake enclosure. So I guess we'll just start with the basics, which is the overhead heating and lighting. As you can see, some of you are probably already writing comments in the comment section as we speak. This is kind of a controversial overhead heating setup, specifically talking about that one right there. That is the gold infrared heat lamp unit from Reptile Systems. It's a pretty great light, with the exception of the red hue, which a lot of people don't like. My thoughts on that are, I don't really see it as a problem. I am not running this heat lamp at night. It runs exclusively during the day with, at the very least, that back LED light panel on. Sometimes it's running without that LED spotlight and UVB light, but that's usually only for 30 minutes to an hour at the beginning and the end of the day. But usually the red hue is not super visible. Like, as you can see right now, it's basically non-existent. I mean, if you look very closely right there, there's a little bit of a red hue kind of along the edges, just where that LED light panel and LED spotlight aren't hitting. There's some red hue, but other than that, it's basically non-existent. That heat lamp is pretty awesome. It provides a lot of infrared A, which is super healthy for our animals. Infrared A is the healthiest infrared wavelength out of the three. It does provide infrared B, but it's barely anything compared to the infrared A, which is pretty awesome. Unfortunately, after explaining this to certain people, they're still judgmental towards me, saying I'm knowingly neglecting my animals, which is kind of rough to hear, but I know some very, very reputable reptile keepers who recommend this light, so I'm just going to keep using it because I don't really see a problem with it. For the UVB light, we just have a standard T5 Arcadia UVB light, and then that's an LED spotlight. It's also technically a grow light, so it'll be useful for a bioactive setup. above, it just looks like your standard LED spotlight with the cooling grills. It actually doesn't run that hot, but you're not supposed to use it within like one of those like ceramic dome fixtures. So that's why up on top of it, I just have just like a standard light bulb socket, whatever you'd call that. And then completely optional, like very, very optional. I mean, pretty much a lot of the stuff you're going to see in this video is optional, but this especially, this is an aquarium light. I just basically have it programmed to kind of change colors throughout the day. In this enclosure, I have a very cool like day and night, like obviously day and night, but like a sunrise and sunset cycle, which looks pretty awesome. And that LED aquarium light just kind of helps out with that. Last but not least, we just have a ceramic heat emitter that I run at night. It's set to a lower temperature. I try to aim to keep that basking rock right there at about 82 overnight, and usually the area around that area will kind of get warm and be up at like 75 to 78, but the rest of the enclosure gets pretty cool anyways at night, which is totally fine for king snakes. They can deal with a night drop like that, but I like to provide him with just a little bit of heat in case he wants it, which he actually never uses it. He'll usually burrow like usually in this area right here overnight, but I've only ever once seen him rest on that rock for the night. And then for the thermostats, we have just a standard dimming thermostat. It's just a standard one on Amazon. That's hooked up to a smart outlet along with everything else, and that just automatically kicks on at night. And then during the day, the thermostat that I have, that is hooked up to, as you probably saw before, a herpstat. And I used to kind of play around with like the ramp feature of this thing, where it would like slowly rise the temperatures and then slowly drop them at night. But that really only works pretty well if you're exclusively using a lightless heat source. With something like this, you kind of can't do that effectively. So I just have it set to turn on and off. It turns on full power in the morning, turns off at night. I have it set to never go over 80%, which I find is very effective. And the reason it's pretty effective is I'm jumping in post-editing because I spent the next minute in this footage just fumbling with my words. I have it set to 80% because that keeps the basking temperature at a steady 88 degrees without fluctuating up and down. The problem is if I don't set the maximum power and I just let the dimming thermostat do its thing to maintain the temperature, it spends the entire day just fluctuating between 90% power and 30% power, which works if it's a lightless heat source, but this isn't a lightless heat source. So it's kind of awkward seeing it fluctuate up and down all day constantly. Setting it to 80% just keeps it totally steady, and then if the temperature for whatever reason rises up to 90, 91, 92, that's when the herpstat will dim the light dimmer to maintain those temperatures. I hope that made sense. This definitely will make more sense than what I had previously recorded in the video. I don't want to yap about that too much. That's getting into like really nerdy stuff, but I'm sure some of you would have been interested in that, so wanted to get that out of the way. Moving on next, I just want to talk about the overall like enrichment of the enclosure. To start off, I was using aspen shavings for the longest time, ever since I got this snake 2 years ago. And I've never had a problem with it. And honestly, if you, as long as you use a humid hide, which I'm doing right now anyways, aspen shavings are totally fine from my understanding. But I did get cussed out by some people on TikTok for using aspen shavings. And I didn't switch because they cussed me out. It just kind of made me think like, you know what? It probably wouldn't hurt to try something else. And so I switched over to cocoa husk. We're still figuring out if that's a good alternative or not. One nice thing about it so far is it's ridiculously cheap. I paid $30 for an entire block and it filled it all the way up to here. If I wanted to do that same amount with aspen shavings, that would cost me about $80 on Amazon, as just using cocoa husk only costs me $30 for all of this, which is pretty awesome. Gives him a lot more room to burrow, and then obviously cocoa husk is much more resilient to being sprayed down with water and increased humidity, so that's pretty cool as well. He'll enjoy that. I know for a fact he will. A lot of fake plants that I bought on Amazon that I have just kind of scattered throughout the enclosure, especially over there. I have some driftwood that I acquired at a reptile expo just recently. That one came with a base. And actually, that specific driftwood did not come with a base, but there was another piece that I saw at the reptile expo that came with a base, but it was pine wood. Obviously, pine wood is not good for snake enclosures, so I just bought that, took the base off of the pine wood, threw the pine wood out, cut that one down to size, and drilled a hole into it, and I use that with a stand. And then this one basically just leans on that one and the rock background. This is the first day I've had this driftwood in this enclosure, and I think it looks absolutely awesome. He's always had that rock background to climb on and that stuff over there, but I don't know, just having these huge driftwood pieces in his enclosure now just looks pretty awesome. So I'm very excited. If you're wondering where he's at right now, he's in shed, unfortunately. Not unfortunate, just unfortunate for the video itself. I would have loved to have taken him out and shown you guys him, but he's currently in shed, so it'll be another week or so before I see him like really utilizing all these new changes that I've made in this enclosure. Other changes that I've made, this is pretty much all the same. The majority of this enclosure basically looked like this before, minus the driftwood, and then minus all this substrate right here. That does bring me to the rock background. I guess I brought that up, so I guess I should mention that. I got it from Universal Rocks. It was on Dubia Roaches or Dubia.com, or I forget the exact name of the website, but from the same website I got this enclosure from. Pretty easy to put in. I just recommend silicone. Putting silicone along the edges just so your snake can't get behind it at all. That's basically the only thing that you have to do, but other than that, it's like really awesome. Provides them with some extra climbing opportunities, and it just looks awesome as well. Like, I mean, just standing back looking at the way the light kind of bounces off of it is pretty cool to see. And he absolutely does climb on it. I see him climbing along there a lot, especially along the top. And it is pretty easy to clean if you have to. I would just recommend you get a brush of some sort. Sorry, I'm reaching down to grab something. Something like this works really well for, like, if they use the bathroom on that rock background, this cleans it up pretty nicely. So I recommend just getting something like that, and then obviously some F10. Let's see here. What else is there to talk about? I guess I can show off the fancy thermometer gun that I have to kind of show you what the heat spread looks like. I mentioned that this light is pretty good for all the infrared A, but another really awesome thing about it is it's super wide heat spread. This has a pretty wide heat spread, not only for light bulbs in general, but halogen light bulbs as well. Usually when you buy halogen lights, they don't have the greatest heat spread. Usually what you'll see is they just have like a very focused beam, which can work, but it's just like obvious reasons that's not ideal. Not with this. This has a super wide heat spread. And I'll show that off in a second. I'm just waiting for this thing to calibrate. Turning it on, it takes a few seconds to calibrate. So let's take a look here. My camera's kind of struggling to focus. There we go. So yeah, you can kind of see how far down the heat spread goes. Pretty darn wide. And I'm sure you could find comparable light bulbs as far as heat spread is concerned, but I don't know. I just really like the quality of these. The light bulbs themselves are kind of temperamental as far as how fragile they are. In shipping, they can often get damaged. And then installing them, you have to use gloves, which a lot of people don't know that. They'll install the bulb. The bulb will burst within the first like hour of being on. It'll be like, what the heck? Like, why are these light bulbs so trash? And it's like, yeah, you got to use gloves to put them on. But I like that heat unit a lot, so much so that I use it in my boa's enclosure as well. although right now the boa's setup is not totally ideal because this enclosure is way too small for a boa, but that's changing soon, and I will make a video on that if you guys request it and when I get the upgraded enclosure. So, I know that my thoughts are kind of scattered with this video, but I think that basically covers everything. Yeah, he seems to really enjoy it. Like, this is something that I was explaining to the people who were cussing me out on TikTok, is they were saying I did not have enough clutter in here. I had way too much open space, which it's not a ton of open space if you see my hand. But they basically wanted me to just absolutely pack this enclosure with clutter. And my issue with that is a couple of things. One, this snake is not defensive at all. He is super happy in this enclosure, from my understanding, so much as, like, if I open up this, if he's out exploring and I open up this sliding door and I put my hand out, he will slither out onto it. He does choice-based handling. And from my understanding, a snake will never do that if something is wrong in their environment. And also, he always has plenty of places to hide. Like, if I want to go handle him during the day when he's not out, it takes a while to find him. And that'll especially be the case now that I have way more substrate and I have 2 large sticks that I got to deal with. So it'll be a process, but it'll be worth it. And then another thing, another problem I see with cluttering his enclosure an insane amount is spot cleaning. This snake, when he is fed a mouse, he will poop once a day, every day for the next 5 days after he's digested it, of course. So after he's fed, 24 to 48 hours later, he's pooping once a day, every day for the next 5 days or so. And I usually try to clean it every single day. But the problem with having all this clutter is sometimes he won't poop in a spot where I can immediately see it. So some nights I will be looking around and I'll see okay, well, he's not active anymore tonight, but I don't see a poop anywhere. So the next morning I'll have to just tear whole sections out to go look for that singular poop. And I just can't imagine doing that with much more clutter in this enclosure. So the thing I was explaining to them is you kind of have to find a balance, in my opinion. Obviously, a lot of clutter is good, but don't overdo it, because at that point, you're going to make cleaning the enclosure a much larger process than it needs to be. And obviously, you want cleaning the enclosure to be fairly doable. If it's totally unmanageable and you're not on bioactive, that can be kind of a pain. And in total, it's just going to overall worsen the health of your snake if you're not able to clean the enclosure out as frequently and effectively as possible. So that's the way I see it. You can argue with me if you want, saying that I'm neglecting my animal by saying that, but that's just my opinion. And that's what I've been living by ever since I've owned this snake, and that's what I'm going to live by with this boa. And I guarantee this boa is going to thrive as well. So that's my thought. Conclusion on that rant. Stay away from toxic people online, specifically TikTok. They seem to specifically, the toxic reptile keepers love to stick to TikTok. But yeah, that basically sums it up, though. Thanks for listening to my rant there at the end. Thanks for watching the video. I would say subscribe to my channel, but it's I'm probably going to post this video and then post the boa enclosure video when I get his new enclosure, and then maybe a couple years down the line when I upgrade his enclosure to a 4x4x2, I'll probably make a video on that. But other than that, I don't really post videos, so I won't even ask for you guys to subscribe. Doesn't even really bother me. I just appreciate you watching. Yeah, thanks for checking this out.